think we have most of our speakers here.
Okay. Salvi, Shripriya?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome to this second webinar of season 2 of our annual webinar series titled Closing Material Loops from Waste to Renewed Resources. It gives me immense pleasure to state today that this is our 10th webinar since the beginning of season 1. And we've had some terrific ideas shared, some terrific conversations, some very practical on-ground solutions that could be implemented, and some great learnings over the course of the last 9 webinars. So before we go any further, I'd love to thank our principal sponsors for today, Apple, Dell Technologies, and Canon, for their continued support and commitment to finding improved solutions in e-waste management. I'd like to thank also our participants, rather our panelists, who have been critical in sharing their experience and knowledge with us over the course of the series. Of course, the Karo Sambhav backend team, especially Shripriya herself, who has been instrumental in putting everything together. And last but not the least, you, all our participants, for a very proactive and engaging um, participation over the course of the last year and a little bit. So, like I said, this is just the second webinar of this series. The first one that happened a month back spoke about exploring options for e-waste disposal and management in addition to recycling being the obvious one. We explored options such as refurbishment, art, various other means of dealing, perhaps even dismantling for creation of innovative products. Uh, Today, the topic of the webinar is harnessing the power, the crucial role of public institutions in e-waste collection. I think, again, a very relevant topic, um, purely given the role that public institutions play, A, in setting up of regulatory and policy frameworks, B, in implementing the existing rules and regulations in the country, C, just merely for the kind of reach that these organizations have, the kind of influence that they have as well. And lastly, for the amount of e-waste, the direct e-waste that such organizations generate. In fact, a report in 2016 said that about 70% of India's e-waste comes from private, public, and government-aided sectors. Obviously, over the past 7 years, that proportion may have reduced significantly, but I think all of you will agree that still a huge proportion of e-waste that also comes out from the public sector. And today we have 5 esteemed panelists with us to deliberate and find solutions to some nagging questions we've had over the past few years. And we really look forward to hearing from you over the course of this webinar. Just to mention to the attendees the flow of this webinar, we'll start off with the initial um, comments by Dr. Rachna Arora from GIZ. She's our keynote speaker for today. That will be followed by the panel discussion, which will be moderated by my ever so enthusiastic colleague Shripriya. And finally, we will have a Q&A session to address questions and queries of the audience and the listeners. Just a quick suggestion. While we may not be able to do a verbal interaction, I would suggest and request all the participants during the course of the discussion to kindly write their questions in the chat box. And based on time availability, we'll try and address most, if not all, of your questions. Also, a slight change, I think one of our panelists, Shri Jayesh Ranjan ji, may have to leave. So we could do perhaps the Q&A a little earlier, at least questions addressed to him, and then take it forward at the end. So that's about the flow. Getting right to it then, our keynote address for this webinar will be given by Dr. Rachna Arora. She is from GIZ and currently team lead for the EU-REI for India initiative, which is the resource efficiency initiative supported by the European Union. She is also the team lead for circular economy solutions preventing marine litter project undertaken by GIZ. Thank you very much, Dr. Rachna, for taking the time out. And we'll really look forward to hearing and learning from you over the course of this webinar. So over to you.
Thanks, Sushant. And can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, and thanks to the team from Karo Sambhav for inviting us here. It's always a pleasure, and I think I have been involved with the e-waste, and I'm really also happy to see that you've actually got Mr. Jayesh, Ranjan, and others who have been also so very instrumental in the government process to actually embed a lot of policy measures, especially in the state of Telangana, as we've seen progress there, and also other states coming in. But yeah, I think so. I've been involved with e-waste, I would say, since 2007. So it's always kind of every time that we have these webinars or conversations around it, there is a learning, and I think that's where we see webinar series like these, which add a lot of value, especially because it is still a domain, and I think you mentioned a number that 60 to 70% of space is in the B2B or in the public institutions, and I think this figure remains a bit constant. And also what remains a bit in the conversations in the studies also is that we still have a lot of waste which is in the informal sector, which is at times also a bit crucial to especially address the aspects of resource efficiency, circular economy, and also looking from how does the waste actually move into the right space as we are looking at. So moving with that, I would say the rules, of course, clearly talk about where are the responsibilities of the public institution, bulk generators, and bulk consumers. So I'm not going into line by line of what rules is, because I think that's pretty well explicit. And also now with the digital portal that the Ministry of Environment and the Central Commission will come up with, I'm sure a lot of reporting as well as things would also be addressed from their part, both with the brand owners, like with the producers and manufacturers and all, but also the role of public institutions would be very explicit, because the portal actually brings a lot of traceability. So I'm not going word by word, but I would like to add talks about circular economy. So just looking from that perspective, that there is a lot of it when we say on circular economy, not just a better recycling, like the material flows of moving the waste from the informal or moving it after it's collected to the formal recycling, but it's also crucial is for the public institutions to largely see the role when it comes to, especially on decision making, which is like when we talk about the short-lived obsolescence rate of the product. So that's something, because that's completely contrast to a circular economy. We talk about still disposal of an equipment which is in a given lifetime, because there are updates, there are software updates and others. So how do you actually transition from a resource intensive, from looking from where you require more and more, because of the short-lived electronic products, you actually require replacements. So where is it that we see the role for public institutions? And I think there is a lot of work that's happened, especially with regard to the procurement. At least it's there in the discussions, but we haven't seen the scale. So that's, I think, one that we really look at in terms of how do you transition to a circular economy where public institutions put forward the enabling environment which is required to make it more material efficient as such. So that's there. I come from, currently we're doing this EU resource efficiency project. Of course, we actually see how is it that the European Union put forward not just circularity, but also embedded through decision making, providing a roadmap through the frameworks. Of course, in 2019, just before the pandemic, the European Green Deal actually puts forward circular economy on the forefront. And of course, that's why you see a lot of action, whether it's climate, whether it's biodiversity, or in terms of addressing pollution. You've seen at least the EU Green Deal actually talking about enabling policies, practices, and it also translates from the policies and frameworks to the roles of public institutions. So that's, I think, the framework is quite clear when it comes to Circular Economy Action Plan or the EU Green Deal from 2019. So that's there. In the EU Green Deals, we've also seen electronics, as I mentioned, as one of the clear sectors which has been embedded. So, of course, this is that a circular electronics initiative was launched, where it's more about how do you actually look at promoting longevity of the product. How do you actually, so that's where I think even if the public institutions don't have a major role in terms of manufacturing, what is the major role is in terms of the regulatory measures, which talks about ICT, electronic equipments, mobile phones, tablets, whatever it is. How do you actually put it in a directive, which at least the EU is doing with the EU, with the Eco Design Directive, where at least the regulatory measures would promote right to repair, which talks about measures on universal chargers, which talks about a common charger, for instance, improving better collection rates of WEEE. So, for instance, the tendering process that currently the system still has, in terms of how do you actually dispose your electronics. So these are things which are currently in the EU embedded as a part of the circular economy, the circular electronics initiative. So right to repair is something which starts from the policy, is translated down to the regulatory measures and to the public sector institutions to actually take care of it. In India, of course, there were policies, there have been practices, but I would say from the 2021, with the entire movement on Mission Circular Economy launched by our Prime Minister, Lifestyles for Environment, which has been informed. From there on, we have seen at least a traction which actually talks about how do you look at sustainable consumption, how do you look at making that transition. So looking at short-term life of the product, and of course, so I think these things have been deliberated with the Ministry of IT, with the Niti Aayog, with these committees who have been set up, but largely coming through the electronics, the MeitY Circular Economy Act, which was also released in July 2021, clearly is, I would say, quite disruptive, because it actually just not talks about how do we look at electronic waste. It actually brings an entire circular economy vision thinking into at least the product categories. And since it was 2021, it actually talks about few waste categories as such. So that clearly looks at electronics and electrical sector. So holistically, when we talk about, for instance, in the action plan, we talk about PLI scheme, for instance, the public linked incentive scheme, for instance, so that production could actually get a boost, where you talk about how do you look at optimizing production with as much as possible secondary resources. Now, when we talk about better recycling, better infrastructure, and this is where the CPCB portal that I actually mentioned would actually have a lot of regulatory influence, that the recyclers that get actually registered onto the portal would actually be something which can be audited by a public institution, whosoever is auctioning waste, or wherever your waste is lying down, you would really be clear of where is exactly my waste getting recycled, because that was the biggest issue as well, where you don't actually figure out that, okay, how is my waste getting processed? At least with this digital portal, there is maybe looking at more enforcement, looking at better compliances with the recyclers, whosoever would get registered. So that's where at least the tendering process with regard to the auctioneers or the bidding process would be a bit more, because only people registered could actually come onto this portal. Coming back to the raw material, the secondary resources, I think the production linked incentive scheme is something which is part of the MeitY's vision document. And that's why when I see all the decision makers also, some of them also being here in the panel, it really gives a boost that there are center of excellences when it comes to center of excellence who actually could look at how do you enable a production, because of course we are not looking at an entire electronic production here. So the value chain is still not clear when it comes to e-waste recycling, but the focus with the METI action plan on the production link scheme could actually bring more, I would say, incentives for if any raw material production looks at secondary utilization of copper or even high value plastic for that matter, and if possible, the critical materials, if we recycle it in India to that honor, could actually consider it. So that's one thing which is clearly as a measure mentioned in the action plan of METI, which is there. Similarly, I think proceeding further with Niti Aayog, and for us also it was very, very recent. Last year in November, when the Prime Minister actually announced and asked the Department of Telecom also to come up with an action plan on circular economy. Now, for this, we actually are not just talking about electronics and electrical equipment, but also talking about telecommunications, which in itself is an entire supply chain where largely I would say it is the public sector who are responsible to take action. So this is under preparation. And in fact, in August, September, we plan to submit it to the government, to the Department of Telecom. So this would be a very different, value chain, but bringing in these aspects, as I mentioned, PLI scheme, subscription services and other, which address circular economy, but from the telecom sector products per se. This is, I would say, going to be like quite, again, tangible when it comes to how do you embed circularity into these processes. The other is, I think, again, clearly mentioned on the action plan was to how do you actually look at monitoring of not just the e-waste reporting that would go to the Ministry of Environment and CPCB through the reporting from frameworks that the public enterprises or the bulk generators have to follow, but it's also crucial for the manufacturers, for the Ministry of IT and for others to actually see how do you monitor the move towards circularity and what are the kind of measurement framework indicators that we actually talk, which bring in performance, which bring more productivity in the system, which reduces the waste discharge, support the entire mission life, as I mentioned, more sustainable consumption practices, move to integrate the informal sector, looking at upgradation, jobs and skills, looking at an entire, again, digital tracking of the critical raw materials, if any. So this is the work which we're also doing currently with the METI in terms of developing and monitoring and evaluation guidance. And as it is done, we would really like to do trainings with the public institutions to actually see how do you embed green public procurement, where do you talk about CRM, like the critical raw material, traceability, supply chain, etc. So these are things which are up in there. And of course, it requires not just systems to be set up, but it requires the capacities within the public institutions, because not many times the capacities, and I think there was a huge program which was carried for 5 to 8 years almost with the METI. So there are a lot of tools which are available, at least in terms of raising awareness, in terms of getting the right set of know-how, but taking that decision making when it comes to public investments, looking at role that institutions can play to accelerate. I think this is where we still require discussions on how do you monitor the progress and where exactly is this reporting going, because currently in the e-waste reporting, it is just about material on the market as well as how much the recycling. But if the public institutions look at a larger value chain when it comes to the vision with METI or with Ministry of Telecom, I would say these are also elements where the state government, public institutions could actually still play a much more forthcoming role than just the e-waste reporting as such. Moving on, I would also suggest is, again, taking further with the green public procurement bit. When it comes to, at least when we compare it to the EU, the design for recycling, eco-design measures, embedding the circular economy business models, product as a service becomes quite crucial. And here I can give an example, because usually with circular economy, when we just talk about waste recycling, it is not something which is the solution. So we really look at how and where do you make a decision that the product that you buy is not having an end life of 3 to 5 or 7 years. It actually is a subscription-based model that you actually buy, and usually it's quite prevalent for printers, for some specific forms of electronic or EE equipment. And this is something which we had also submitted to Ministry of IT, that you don't look at just doing a business as usual that the companies are usually sell, but look at an alternative wherein the entire tracking in terms of entire assessment of what products are in the market, and also in terms of how does like the entire end of life bit gets transferred to the producer. So look at subscription services, which can also go further. And here conversations were quite forward with GEM portal. So this portal where procurement is usually done by the OEMs, by the government, is also being undertaken. So basically the procuring entity, the entity, public institution, whosoever is procuring, could actually put the criteria where the products which are more environment friendly, or the disposal practices, or subscription services can actually get embedded onto this portal. And this was a recommendation we have already provided to the Ministry of IT, and I think this can actually be taken up, and this will be quite, again, like a market intervention which can influence either green procurement or it can also influence subscription services moving forward, because then your the terms of reference or the criteria for selecting these companies could actually differ. So I would say this is something which is quite interesting, especially when we talk about a shift to a circular economy model, because usually it's again all about how do I dispose, which are the authorized vendors, and where is it that the material doesn't go to the kabadiwalas. But so even going to that level, better solution would be if you actually talk about subscription services, because then the company whosoever is providing a rental or a product as a service is actually responsible for the entire bit and provides you maintenance, annual maintenance, like the AMC contracts and other. So direct benefits, but also looking at indirect benefits which are quite relevant. Again, here we require a lot of capacity building, time saving capacities and others. So yeah, that's, I think, one input which is quite very well clear for the public institutions. Again, I would mention largely on the recycling front, on the end of life stage itself, that in terms of technologies, in terms of recovery, recycling, we are still looking at much more advanced systems, and largely because this has been one of the major bottlenecks. One is, of course, we talk about large volumes getting generated, but the amount which is available in the system for formal recycling is very limited, because we still have the similar number, 80 to 90% lands up in the informal. Something which the state of Rajasthan, I think, initiated is to actually look at doing a waste recycling park. They actually started with an e-waste, like a integrated park, but later it became like a resource recovery park for all waste streams, because this is something wherein if you talk about end-of-life vehicles, batteries, plastics, solar panels, a lot of it is already included in the current e-waste regulation. So that's why the Rajasthan State Pollution Control Board actually came up with this request, and we've actually prepared an entire study around how would the investments come in. And RICO, the Rajasthan State Infrastructure Development Corporation, is the one who's actually developing currently the park proposal. So we have supported them with a pre-feasibility study, zoning, mapping of the park, and of course looking at what are the global best practices, and also looking at what are the practices in India, so that the waste could actually land up. And when we talk about, again, a very huge source of waste streams, which is end-of-life vehicles, e-waste, plastics, the directions from the regulators are different. But when it comes to bulk, or when it comes to the public sector disposal, it could still be an option that at least the waste from Delhi or the NCR region could actually, because this park is just not too far from Delhi, it could still be, if there are investments, and currently they are looking at few of the companies who've expressed interest, again, to set this kind of a park, which could offer some integrated solutions, so that the volumes are pretty high. And then you can talk about technology investments, because the major issue that we still see with regard to the recycling technologies is the materials. If you actually have a bit more mixed waste stream, of course, coming together, whether it's end-of-life vehicles or because the fractions of, say, plastics, or with the batteries or with the solar panels, you can actually still have technologies which can support the large scale if you actually have investments of that sort. So that's I think something wherein we can also see role for large scale state industry development cooperations to actually think about. So that's one. Just one of the last inputs, because we talk about 3 R's and of course many more R's now with circular economy. Repair and reduce is one which is pretty well evident, and especially when it comes to lifestyles for environment. This has been one of the key elements on right to repair globally, as well as we've also seen a bit hint in the Circular Economy Action Plan with the Ministry of IT. That's why we were actually quite happy to see the Manufacturers Association of IT, MATE, who's actually looking at piloting a repair hub. Again, an industry collaboration for the first time coming forward to actually set up this entire electronic repair ESRO, as it's called, the electronic repair service outsourcing, which will be again industry-led hub. But this will actually be one upgradation of the formal, semi-formal, informal who has been involved in the repair market, enhance the life and livelihood of the people, but also look at the repair industry. And we know in India, we of course have repairs happening in every nook and corner of the city. So when we talk about right to repair, having a readiness where the industry is pretty forthcoming to actually say. So this, I think, is a good move, which is actually going to push the market, especially with regard to the repair and the remanufactured products onto the market, endorsed by the industry so that people can have a bit more trust on it. So yeah, I would say these are broadly my ideas, capacities, policies, and of course, investments for infrastructure, where I gave these two examples of either a industry association led, like the MATE ESRO repair bit, or even with regard to the common infrastructure like the Rajasthan waste recycling park or such. So yeah, I think for now I would just park these ideas and happy to have more questions and yeah, answers to that.
Thank you so much. Dr. Rachna, I think that was, thank you for sharing, first of all, the EU as well as the local initiatives. I think you've covered pretty much. It seems quite a daunting task, but I think the crux of what you said is to look at this issue of e-waste management in a holistic sense, right? When you speak about sustainable consumer behavior, having benchmarking indicators, recyclers in terms of the quantum and proportion of metal of elements that they could recycle, capacity building, etc. I think very, very relevant points and a great way to set up what is left of this webinar. Shripriya, I think we have a speaker who has to leave quickly, so I will, without wasting too much time, hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Sushant, and thank you so much, Rachna. I mean, after listening to your points, I can only say that I feel all the more important for all the actors to collaborate together, especially public institutions, to implement these action plans and make it effective. So, on that note, I would like to welcome all our panelists today. So, we have our panelist one, Shri Jayesh Ranjan, Secretary, Information Technology with Government of Telangana. Then we have Dr. Thomas Chandy, Chief of Party, Strengthening Landscape Management and Conservation Project of USAID in India. He was also formerly the Chairman of Sikkim Pollution Control Board. Then we have Shri T. Mahesh, who is the Director of EMPRI, Karnataka, and Chief Environment Officer with Karnataka State Pollution Control Board. We have Ms. Larissa Rodriguez, Associate Professor, Human Development, and she's also the coordinator of the Nature Club and in charge of e-waste drives at the Goa College of Home Science. And the next panelist we have is Shri Ghansham, who's the Chief Environment Officer, Uttar Pradesh Pollution Control Board. So my first question goes to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. So I think Ms. Rachna also mentioned about this, the Center of Excellence, and I just wanted to understand from you, how does the Center of Excellence that is today present in Telangana state plan to collaborate with industries, startups, and academic institutions to develop these cost-effective technologies for e-waste recycling? And if you could share some case studies that what strategies is the COE planning to execute to empower the informal e-waste recyclers in India and to support them in skill building. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shripriya. Greetings to all the fellow panelists. Greetings to all the participants. Delighted to be a part of this very interesting panel on a very thought-provoking topic. So I'll come straight to the question that you have asked me and share something about the Center of Excellence on E-Waste Management that we have set up here in Hyderabad. This itself is a very unique concept, first in its kind in the country, which creates both a physical infrastructure and also a knowledge hub for cost-effective technologies for e-waste recycling, for dissemination of e-waste solutions to the interested industry. See what Rachna ji mentioned, and all of us intuitively also know that one is that, see, there are two big challenges in the e-waste scenario in our country. One is that e-waste is handled by informal sector predominantly, that too in a very rudimentary way. And we also know that the technologies currently for recycling, particularly for recovering the precious materials, precious metals, that is also not there. Therefore, most of what is even handpicked by informal sector, etc., after some levels of kind of refining, it is exported to other countries. Very little of in-house capacities are there. So this Center of Excellence actually targets both these challenges. It's trying to build the capacities of the stakeholders in improving collection, segregation, sorting, primary processing, secondary processing. But more than that, it is also developing technologies which are environmentally, I would say, environmentally benign technologies, and which are also affordable. So it obviously works with all the stakeholders, works with academia. I'm happy to share that because the COE is located in Hyderabad, they have started a very rich partnership with IIT Hyderabad. And the first thing which they have done is to introduce an MTech program on e-waste resource engineering and management. So some of these technology challenges that we don't have the capacities to kind of recoup precious metals, this MTech program answers it. And similarly, we are also looking, the Center of Excellence is looking at an international collaboration. There's an institute in Germany, part of Cologne University. We are kind of working with them. So academia definitely is one important partner. We work with industry because we want, so some of these technologies which the Center of Excellence has kind of pioneered, the technology transfer process has started. And in the first cohort, I'm happy to share with you, it happened just about a month ago. About 10 private enterprises received this technology of transfer. There was a ceremony organized in Niti Aayog, etc. We are also focused on training the informal e-waste recyclers to improve their game, to do better practices, environmental friendly practices, etc. And some of the technologies that we have, that the center has kind of patented so far. I won't get into too much of technical detail, but we have they have created a recycling technology for the printed circuit board, the PCB, and you can extract gold, silver, palladium, and copper from the PCB waste, the wasted PCB. Similarly, we know that one of the most common e-waste today is end-of-life lithium-ion batteries. Again, the center has developed a patented process methodology for recovery of lithium, cobalt, magnesium, nickel from all these batteries. Similarly, as you know, magnets are also wasted. I mean, many of the electronic waste uses magnets, and when you're discarding a waste, magnet is also discarded in the process. So something very amazing has been done. This Center of Excellence has created a technology through which some of these rare earth oxides, like ND2O3, etc., etc. So from this permanent magnets, you can extract almost 99.9% recovery is there. Solar cells is also becoming important contributor to the e-waste. And again, very pure silicon wafer can be recycled, can be extracted, recycled. So lots of these technology innovations, transferring these technologies to industries, helping the other important stakeholders, which is the informal sector, the pickers, the recyclers, etc. So as I said, this is a very unique institution working quite well for the last 3 years, jointly established by Government of India, Ministry of Technology, and the state government. So happy to elaborate anything further if you want to know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayesh. We know you are constrained on time, so just I would like to ask you one last question. Considering the kind of stakeholders who are attending the meeting today, if someone would like to do a project with you, with the Center of Excellence, how can they reach out? And if you could just shed some light on that.
Yeah, so the Center of Excellence also has a incubator, an incubation facility, because we know today that most of the important tech breakthroughs is coming from the world of startups. Young entrepreneurs, young innovators are the people who are coming out with breakthrough technologies, something which we have appreciated ever since the new state of Telangana came into being in 2014. So every institution of ours compulsorily has space and programs for innovators. In the Center of Excellence also, there is an innovation facility. We have 7 startups who are incubated under this Center of Excellence. So if you are a startup, my presumption is, without knowing precise backgrounds of all the members of the audience today, my presumption is that many of them would be startups. So please apply on the COE website if you want to become a part of the incubation process. If you are an MSME also who are involved in this aspect, the Center of Excellence offers many training programs for dismantling of e-waste, value chain identification, etc. If you are a large company which wants to take technology from the COE and kind of set up your own facilities, as I told you, 10 of them have already done so. But as I mentioned briefly, there are many technologies that are available. Not every technology has been adequately lapped up by the industry. So lots of opportunities are there. And in whichever way you want to connect, I'll be happy to. Maybe what I'll do is that I'll type my mail ID in the chat window. So please pull out my mail ID and whatever uh, way of engagement that you want to have with us in the Center of Excellence, we'll be very happy to support. It's a nascent institution. As I say, advancement is knowledge is happening at a very, very rapid pace. And we always are looking out for new opportunities, new collaborations. So happy to bring you on board. Look out for my mail ID, which I'm about to type in 10 seconds.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jayesh. That was really insightful. So, with that, we will take your leave, and I hope there'll be a lot more emails that you get in your inbox post this session. My next question goes to Mr. Thomas Chandy. So, if you could just switch on your camera, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Can you see me and hear me?
Yes. Both audio, video, doing well. So the question to you is, considering your extensive experience in environmental conservation, particularly during your tenure with as a chairman of the Sikkim Pollution Control Board, could you shed light on the specific challenges that Sikkim has encountered, and if you could also probably zoom out a little and probably share of what the Northeast region specifically faces when it comes to disposal of e-waste and its recycling, and how do you see or envision the public institutions playing a pivotal role in addressing and overcoming these challenges? So over to you.
Thank you, Shri Priya. I'll talk about my experience with Sikkim as Pollution Control Board. I actually had 2 stints as chairman of the Sikkim State Pollution Control Board. The first one was a very short one, and the second one was, of course, a full term. But I left the Pollution Control Board 6 months ago to take up this new assignment here. So my knowledge and submissions would be a bit outdated, maybe 6 to 8 months outdated. But so I'm not aware of what's happened in Sikkim since I left the state. But anyway, um, let me just tell you what the challenges are relating to e-waste management in the northeastern states generally, because I have traveled extensively in the northeastern states and I know the problem in most of the northeastern states, barring maybe to some extent Assam, is the same as we face in Sikkim. In fact, it is even probably more in the other states because there is a little bit of recycling happening in Sikkim. I know for sure that there are some states in the Northeast where there's no recycling happening. So let's now let's consider these challenges in the background of the socioeconomics of the northeastern region. Now, we all know that the northeastern part of the country is a reasonably affluent part of the region of the country as compared to the rest of the country. So that means society is consumerist and they use a lot of electronic goods. A lot of electronic goods used not only in the government sector and now the private sector that is coming into the state, but also by the local people. So the extent of e-waste that is produced also would be quite high. Maybe in terms of volume, it is not high as in some of the bigger states. But then if you look at the volume per capita, the volume of e-waste generated per capita, it is still quite high because it's a consumerist society. And like I said, people, they are very tech savvy. They if there's a new iPhone that comes out, 3 years after a person has had bought an iPhone, he would still discard his old iPhone and take a new one. So that's the level of consumerism that is there. And so this is the background, and therefore the e-waste that is generated also in terms of in terms of the per capita um, um, production of e-waste is still quite high in the northeastern states. Now, before the e-waste rules were notified, of course, I'm aware that there were e-waste rules even in 2011, the old one. But the new e-waste rules that came up in 2016, which were a little more stringent and which actually sought to streamline the process of e-waste management. Till that happened, e-wastes were being discarded along with solid wastes in Sikkim, as it was, I think, in most parts of the country. It may be still happening in many parts of the country, I'm pretty sure, in remote areas, because now the reach of at least the mobile phones is there almost everywhere. In every remote corner of the country, mobile phones are used, and obviously I'm not sure where these are getting discarded, how these are getting collected, given the magnitude of the country, the population of the country, and the difficulty to reach out to most of the remote locations. So in Sikkim also, e-waste was a sizable proportion. Well, not sizable, but it was a major concern for the Pollution Control Board as well as the urban local bodies, because it did form a part of the legacy waste. And when the State Pollution Control Board tried to address this problem, there are two landfill sites that we have in Sikkim. They are called sanitary landfills, but they are nothing more than, at least till about 3 or 4 years back, they were nothing more than dumping sites. So we could see electronic goods being dumped there. In fact, when I in my last assignment as chairman, when I convened a meeting of the CEOs of the municipalities of Sikkim. I was appalled to, I just put across a question to them. I asked them, what are you doing with the old computers and printers and keyboards and things like that? How do you dispose of these things? So I was appalled to hear one of the CEOs say that it was being, we are taking good care of it. We are transporting everything into the dump sites and we are dumping it there. So I asked her, I said, are you aware of e-waste management rules? So she said no. So that's the level to which awareness also, and this was about 3 years ago. So there was a lack of awareness among officials, forget about the local people. So and that was the situation about 3 or 4 years back. Then, of course, there was a lot of campaign around e-waste, but it was actually it was seen as a lesser problem than solid waste, especially plastic waste, and therefore the stress was more on the plastic waste component of the solid waste. But then plastic waste also was recognized as electronic waste also was recognized as something that needed attention. So uh, um, so so we did a lot of campaigns and awareness generation, especially in the schools and colleges. We, of course, used some of the regulatory powers that were available to us under the Environment Protection Act uh, to secure compliance of bulk distributors, especially in the government and in the private sector. Private sector in Sikkim is mostly the pharma companies, the pharmaceutical companies, but they use a lot of electronic goods. So a lot of campaign and a lot of directions were sent out to people. So there is a renewed awareness about the importance of e-waste. However, having said that, the problem is, how do you ensure that wastes are collected? That was the first. The first thing is to get the electronic waste segregated from the legacy waste, which was being initiated when I left Sikkim. I'm not sure what the status is now. The second thing is to ensure that e-waste is collected and they are properly inventorized in collection centers. Now, how do you set up? Where do you set up collection centers in Sikkim, where the availability of land is pretty scarce? You don't have, because most of the urban centers, they are so full of constructions that there is no further scope for any land which can be made available for something like a collection center. And we require collection centers not just for the e-waste, but we also require land for MRFs, for solid waste, for plastic waste, and things like that. So we require a lot of land, and we could have an integrated kind of a thing. We were looking at integrated solutions. So where we can have a multi-storied integrated structure which can take care of different kinds of wastes, and where the requirement of the law can be met as regards different kinds of waste. So we were looking at all that. But then the problem is, and I think Karo Sambhav also has been trying very hard to get some space in Gangtok or close to Gangtok where they can set up a collection center. But I'm not sure whether you've been successful with this. But as of now, the collection was being there was a collection center in the office of the Gangtok Municipal Corporation. And with our initiative, we were able to set up a collection center in South Sikkim in Jorethan, in a place called Jorethan. We were able to set up a collection center. Getting land for setting up collection centers is actually a bit of a problem in Sikkim. It is a challenge. And I think for this purpose, the only solution seems to be trying to get forest land diversion for setting up these structures. Now, forest land diversion, as you know, it's very difficult to obtain. And I had actually lobbied a bit when I was in the forest department, as well as when I was chairman of the pollution control board in Sikkim. I did lobby with the ministry, with the regional office of the ministry, and I told them that you should try to um, waive off a lot of the stipulations around diversion of forest land for the purpose of setting up of waste-related infrastructure, because this directly affects the environment. If we are not able to regulate how wastes are collected and how they are stored and then dispatched out of the state, then most of it, in any case, will go into forest land, which is not advisable. So I did lobby for this, but so far this is not. I don't see any notification or any indication to the effect that some sort of waiver is available under Forest Conservation Act. But this is the need of the hour, because most of the northeastern states have a reasonably high proportion of forest land as a part of their geographical area. And it's, I think, the same everywhere. It's difficult for people to get land. And so it's difficult to get the structures up. So that's another very important thing that we need to look into. Um, and the other issue that I encountered when I was there was that while the e-waste management rules provide for almost everything relating to the value chain for collection of collection and then processing of e-waste, but what I found was that in Sikkim, even though the society is consumerist and a lot of these things are used by people, therefore a lot of electronic goods, even the modern electronic goods, all of them are sold in the state, but all of these come from outside the state. The manufacturing point, the production centers are outside the state and sometimes very far from the state. I mean, not even in West Bengal, it's either in Karnataka, or it would be in Maharashtra or in Tamil Nadu. It's very far away. So as the responsibility under the e-waste rules is mostly that of the manufacturer or the producer, uh, uh, or the PRO representing the manufacturer or producer, it becomes very difficult to get hold of these people. And if the people and the electronic goods are sold by retailers and they are distributed by distributors. Distributors are the people who are mainly responsible for distributing electronic goods throughout the state, and they are also based outside the state. They would not be based in Sikkim, they would be based outside the state. When you talk to the retailers about collecting back the e-waste, either in terms of buyback scheme, what is known as the refund scheme. So when you talk to them about that, they say they feign ignorance. I don't know whether they are aware of it or not, but they say we have never been told about this by the manufacturer. Therefore, we are not able to do it. Okay, during Diwali time or New Year time, if there is a rebate on things, or if there is an exchange program, yes, people do come in and exchange it, but then that's only once in a while. It doesn't happen all the time. So distributors and retailers, they are unaware of this scheme, and therefore they even don't know anything about EPR, and they don't know anything about that. So they say we are not responsible for taking back any of the waste that is generated out of this. And so is the case with the plastic packaging that goes with these products. it is their responsibility to even collect the plastic packaging. Even that they don't do. So this is one very big problem. And I think here um, it would be very important for pollution control boards located in other parts of the country, especially where the production centers are, to link up with these small pollution control boards in the northeastern states and maybe other places, and ensure that the manufacturers who are located in their state, they become responsible for collection of the e-waste that they generate in the smaller states far away from their production centers. I think there is a need for. We've written to Central Pollution Control Board several times, and I even pursued it once with them, and they said we forwarded it to some bigger pollution control boards. But that's the end of the story. There's nothing concrete happening. So there needs to, I think, without getting the Central Pollution Control Board into the picture, it's actually something which the bigger pollution control boards, where, for example, there's a Samsung manufacturing unit, or there is a Nokia, or there is an Apple now. Whatever is wherever the manufacturing unit is located, in whichever state it is located, if the pollution control board of that state links up with the pollution control board of these and the smaller states, especially the northeastern states, I think it will be possible for manufacturers to be taken to task if they are not performing their duties and their responsibilities under the e-waste management rules. So this is something very important. And another, just related to this, another aspect which I found in the e-waste management amendment rules that came out, I think last year, towards the end of last year, and it is the same for even the EPR guidelines that were notified under the solid waste management rules. It is the same, which is that the manufacturing units, the manufacturers, can actually offset their EPR liability by buying, for example, EPR certificates in the case of e-waste rules. They can buy EPR certificates and set off their liability. Now, this is something which should not be encouraged. It is the same in solid waste management, plastic waste management rules. Because what will happen is that these people will buy the certificates from the bigger states, wherever it's possible to buy it from the bigger states, and they will say that we've accounted for our liability for even the northeastern states. So I think this is something which needs to be looked into, and this is where I think there's a lot of collaboration required at all levels. Now, as far as the role of public institutions is concerned, which is the topic of today's webinar, I think the role of all public institutions is already defined in the rules. And what I feel is that most of these, at least for the northeastern states, I think many of these departments that have been bestowed with particular responsibilities under the rules are not performing those responsibilities. They are not, for example, they are not providing, for example, the urban development department is supposed to ensure that there is segregation of wastes. It may be happening now, but then it was not happening some time back. Similarly, the industry department is to provide space for setting up recycling units in the state, in the industrial estates or in the industrial park. I heard one of the earlier speakers, I think it was Dr. Arora. I think she was speaking about Rajasthan asking for a park for recyclers, if I'm not mistaken. So if the industry department provides space in the industrial estates for setting up of recycling units, I think a lot of the regulatory action of the pollution control boards can be made more meaningful, I think, rather than trying to find out what is the where, in which part of the country was the e-waste that was generated in Sikkim, where was it recycled, and we must have a certificate to that extent. If it was recycled in Bihar, we must have a certificate to that extent, which doesn't happen normally. Once in a while, certificates do come through, but then it doesn't happen all the time. And it definitely doesn't account for all the e-waste that is generated. So we need to, so industries department need to do that. And similarly, like I said, land revenue department, forest department, which other department is the custodian of government land, there should be a provision for providing land for setting up of infrastructure related to collection. So, and the Pollution Control Board, of course, has a big role to play apart from its regulatory functions. I think they need to do. They need to bring in new technology. If there are recycling units, they need to get the technologies that are available elsewhere in the country. They should be able to provide or mobilize support for providing funding for setting up of infrastructure. They should even be involved in campaign. We were in Sikkim. We have been involved in a lot of campaigning, a lot of awareness generation at all levels, and I think over the last 3-4 years, this has had beneficial results. So with that, I think, Shripriya, I'll close my submission, open to any questions.
Thank you so much for bringing in these eye-opening facts about Northeastern, the complications related to Northeastern states. And yes, I completely agree with you on how even the SPCBs can proactively start linking up to the bigger SPCBs, the connection between Northeast and the bigger states where the manufacturing units are actually present. I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners will have questions supporting that, but we'll keep it to the end of the session. I will proceed to the next panelist. Before that, may I request all the panel members to please switch on their cameras. It would be convenient for us to have the discussion. And my next question goes to Miss Larissa. Are you there? Miss Larissa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Shripriya.
Okay, perfect. Would you like to come on camera as well?
My camera shows on here. I'm not sure.
Okay, we are not able to see, but no problem. Let's proceed then. Larissa, the question to you is: if you could share with us, what are the challenges faced by public institutions, such as the institution that you're a part of? What are the challenges faced in disposing of e-waste? And if you could elaborate on the initiatives taken by you as a part of the college in carrying out awareness activities and also figuring out ways to provide means for scientific disposal of e-waste. So over to you.
Yes, hi. So as a college, I'm from the Goa College of Home Science, as you know, here in Goa. We are a small college. So as of our status in the process of disposing of e-waste, recently, I think about 4 years ago, we received circular from the government saying that we could dispose with other agencies that were enrolled with them in the state. Like, for example, Karo Sambhav was one of the agencies listed. The Goa Waste Management Corporation was another agency that was listed. So we would follow the regular process of noting down what were the goods that were there in the college that we wanted to dispose of, making an entire list of, from the stock register when they were bought, etc. And then doing the process of giving them to the organization that was recycling the waste for us. So they had to be registered with the government and through that process. Now, for bigger institutions in the state, as far as I'm aware, for colleges that have much more of e-waste to dispose of, then the condemnation process sometimes takes a very long time because of the amount of paperwork that is involved in actually accounting for all the e-waste that is there. So that takes a long time, and then it totally depends on how fast the college is able to, the person who is assigned to it is able to do it, and how committed they are to that in order to get in touch with the place which has to then take away the stuff. So otherwise that the dead stock remains there for a very long time. And e-waste, of course, Karo Sambhav has been very instrumental in helping us to dispose of our e-waste, but other stuff that still lies in government departments, as in we would, you call them, I suppose, consumer goods, or, chairs and tables and, all these kinds of, the whole process takes a long time. But of late, at least the Goa government has been taking a few steps to make it easier for institutions to go to, private contractors like the ones mentioned to you earlier. Um, as a college, we, as part of a nature club, we get together a set of students who are interested in issues related to natural resources and the environment, etc. And in terms of e-waste, we realize that it's very important for us to first sensitize our students as to why it is important to dispose e-waste correctly. For the past 5 years, we've had the Goa Waste Management Corporation, we've had Sushant also from Karo Sambhav come and give talks to our students to sensitize them. But we realize that students also understand the relevance of e-waste recycling only when we give them examples of how it actually affects their own lives. So when we tell them about if e-waste is disposed incorrectly, how it can affect, enter the water table and, affect you through the food that you consume or through the vegetables that you eat that in a place batteries have been thrown in the past, and how it could cause long-term consequences, then they pay a little more heed to the matter. In terms of students, we also find that it is very important to create awareness on various things, one of which Mr. Thomas spoke about earlier in terms of consumerism, and even the earlier speaker said that, in terms of buying products which have a longer shelf life, as in which can last for longer. Also, which products have generic uses, like for example, an Apple product, when you buy a new phone, for example, requires a particular type of charger but doesn't come with the phone itself. So you need to go elsewhere and buy another charger which is packaged separately, etc. So of course, the organizations are talking about their profit margins and their marketing goods as well, marketing margins as well. But we have to also sensitize students to think about how it affects the environment in that sense. For example, buying a separate charger would again create more waste for myself. So would I think about buying a phone that has a charging similar to the one which I already had before, so I don't have to purchase something else? But usually that doesn't happen, no? And even the life of the phones that we have, the MI phones and the other phones that are there, would hardly last you for about 2 years, and after which you have to, or you are mandated to make a change. Also, niche products like Apple and Microsoft and all, they want us to buy only their products to work with, as in genuine stuff. So again, it becomes difficult for consumers to then decide based on these kinds of things, and most consumers are not even aware of how it impacts us in the long run. So like Mr. Thomas said, the e-waste drives and all the awareness of the e-waste drives that we conduct as a college, like as a college, we also have an infrastructure problem. We don't have enough of space to store any e-waste that comes in. But from the time we conducted our first e-waste drive in 2019, it was with Sushant himself. Realize that most people saved our numbers, and whenever they have e-waste, because we have publicized it a lot, they call us even now and ask us, are you taking e-waste, are you taking e-waste? So as a college, we realize that if we say no, yeah, they are going to dispose of it somewhere where they can get rid of it easily. So we have kept our doors open even though we don't have space. And I personally use my own classroom where we have a platform and we have some storage space underneath. As and when now, even recently last week, one guy came with a toaster and a, old oven and stuff. And I say, yeah, just bring it and keep it. Even though we don't have a drive going on, we still allow them as a social thing to just, come and give their waste to us. So again, it depends on the commitment of the staff who is allotted to it, the students who are aware of it, and those who are willing to go that extra mile, because it's not otherwise done as a routine by most colleges. in Goa in that sense. Most people do it as a drive. Even the panchayats, they do it as a drive. They collect, they dispose, and that's the end of the story. So the sustainability of these kinds of things also probably could be looked at. I also had another thought about, very often now, for example, today we had a conversation about how we need to replace all our tube lights for LEDs because of their efficiency and non-efficiency, etc. So we were discussing if we had to change everything, as in the government is encouraging us to use power saving devices and all that. So if you're going for LEDs, then there should be some place where we can get rid of our earlier use technology, just like when the government was demonetizing and they said, oh, don't use 1,000 rupee notes or 500 rupee notes. They had a place where you could go and give back your old notes and get the value of them. So we don't have a place where we can give back our old tube lights. Till today we don't have a place where we can actually see that tube lights are disposed of correctly in the correct way. So we have thousands of people asking us when we do e-waste drive whether we will take tube lights, and each time we have to refuse them, and it breaks our heart because we know that it will go in the wrong place. Behind our own college, we found a whole bunch of like 400 tube lights which were disposed of by a builder who changed onto some new tube lights in his complex, thrown in the nalla at the back of in the water source of the place where we work. So luckily I happened to go for a walk that morning and I saw it there, and I informed the corporation of the city of Panji, who immediately came and removed the tube lights from there. Otherwise there would be a lot of mercury and other heavy metals in our water wherever that water went. So there are a number of things that institutions can help with. Number one, to make the institution itself aware that it can play this role. That is more important, I feel, today.
Thank you, Larissa. I just love the energy, and we really need more citizens and individuals like yourself who not only champion it as a way of life, but also make the institution that you're a part of accountable to take action. And I mean, it's not easy, like you said, right? Keeping the doors open even when you don't have the space. It is not easy. And I really feel we have enough collaborators. We can probably leverage the public institutions near us where we can get the space to probably store what is coming our way. Slowly and steadily, people are getting aware with the efforts that we are taking, be it the officials or be it even the consumers. But the infrastructure that is needed is still lacking, and that's where we all need to collaborate further so that and I love the example that you gave of demonetization. I think it's a nice analogy to understand what is needed when you are launching something new, right? So on that note, thank you so much, Larissa. I would like to pose my next question to Mr. Ghansham. Sir, are you there? Would you like to come on camera?
Yes, madam.
Okay, sir, आपका camera on है? Okay, I don't know, for some reason we're not able to see. Not an issue. So would you like to switch off and switch on once again? We had the same issue with that. Yeah, now we're able to see. Yes, okay, perfect. Hello, thank you, sir, for coming for this webinar. So the question that we have for you is, we have, one second, yeah, okay. So we have seen the different challenges when it comes to effective e-waste collection. I think Mr. Thomas, Larissa also pointed out the different challenges quite well. We wanted to know from you, what are some of the challenges faced by Uttar Pradesh Pollution Control Board, considering the vastness of the region, and what are the kind of awareness activities that you have been encouraging to have active participation both from industries and the citizens? We know a lot of events have happened in UP recently to promote a sustainable, to promote initiatives that support not only the economy but also mission life. So if you could probably share with us some of the challenges and what are the solutions that you have implemented to overcome those challenges. Over to you.
Thank you. ई-वेस्ट रूल 2016 जो अभी इफेक्टिव 2023 अप्रैल में इफेक्टिव हुआ है, इस रूल्स के अंतर्गत यूपी से 35 टीपीआर रजिस्ट्रेशन हो चुके हैं, जो कि ये सेंट्रल बोर्ड सीपीसीबी के पोर्टल साइट पर जो है ये CPCB के पोर्टल साइट पर रजिस्ट्रेशन करने के लिए बोर्ड ने काफ़ी अवेयरनेस किया है, और ये अवेयरनेस के का ही जरिया रहा है कि जो कि ये इसमें इतने इंस्टीट्यूशंस और इंडस्ट्रीज जुड़ी हुई है। मेन रूप से हम ये कहना चाह रहे हैं कि जो जैसे अभी एक PV-पैड बैटरी का इलेक्शन कमीशन की तरफ से एक बात आई है कि PV बैटरी के बारे में उनको मालूम ही नहीं है कि इसका डिस्पोजल कैसे होगा। ये इस चीज पर मैंने इस पर एक सेमिनार रखी और इस पर बैठक भी किया कि ये एक बड़ा चैलेंज है कि PV बैटरी लिथियम बेस्ड बैटरी जो होती है उस बैटरी का कैसे डिस्पोजल किया जाए, और ये बड़ा चैलेंज है। और इस पर इलेक्शन कमीशन को भी संज्ञान में है, और यहाँ यूपी में इलेक्शन कमीशन के द्वारा ये बैठक का आयोजित कर हम लोग उनको EPR रजिस्ट्रेशन के बारे में और 35 इंडस्ट्री के बारे में बताया गया। इसमें लिथियम बेस्ड जो बैटरी होती है, बैटरी के साथ जो कंस्टिट्यूएंट होते हैं उनको टेस्ट करा करके इसमें लिथियम की कंस्टिट्यूएंट के बैटरी के आधार पर हम ई-वेस्ट पब्लिकली मोस्टली तो ई-वेस्ट ही होता है लिथियम बैटरी में, लेकिन ये बैटरी को वो लोग सिंपल बैटरी समझ रहे थे। लेकिन मैंने जब इस पर अवेयरनेस किया तो ये वो कंस्टिट्यूएंट को टेस्ट करा करके लेबोरेटरी में उसके कंस्टिट्यूएंट में लिथियम आया, और लिथियम के अन्य भी उसके एलिमेंट्स आए, जिस पर अब हम उसको ई-वेस्ट के अंतर्गत उसको हम उनको डिस्पोजल के लिए मैंने उनको SOP जारी किया है। तो इस तरह से तमाम चीजें ऐसी हैं जो कि उस पर हम अभी अनभिज्ञ हैं, जो कि उस पर अवेयरनेस के माध्यम से और ई-वेस्ट के कलेक्शन, रिफर्बिशर और प्रोड्यूसर, इस तरह के सभी लोगों को बताने की जरूरत है कि हम कैसे इसका डिस्पोजल करेंगे, क्योंकि ये बड़ा चैलेंज है। इसमें हम यूपी में अभी हमारे साउथ में हमारे यूपी के वेस्ट में तो तमाम हमारे रिफर्बिशर, रिसाइकलर, प्रोड्यूसर तमाम हैं, लेकिन हमारे वेस्ट यूपी में नहीं है। ये हमारा एक छूटा हुआ पार्ट है जिसमें यहाँ अवेयरनेस की जरूरत है। तो इस पर हम अपने विभाग की तरफ से भी और अन्य जो बड़े हमारे रिसाइकलर्स हैं, रिफर्बिशर हैं, उनको भी इनवाइट कर रहे हैं कि उनको यहाँ पर आएं और उसकी इस प्रॉब्लम को दूर करें। थैंक यू।
थैंक यू सो मच सर। जस्ट एक और क्वेश्चन मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूंगी कि कंसिडरिंग कि हमेशा स्टेट पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड्स के साथ एक कॉमन इशू रह चुका है कि जहाँ पे जो मैन पावर है, जितने जो लोग चाहिए टू इम्प्लीमेंट द रूल्स, वो हमेशा कम रहे हैं, जिस वजह से काफी चैलेंजेस आते हैं, क्योंकि आपको बस ई-वेस्ट ही नहीं, कई सारे वेस्ट के लिए you need to provide solution. So in such a case, how can other public institutions be of support to State Pollution Control Board when it comes to enforcement of the rules? अगर आप इस पे कुछ शेयर करना चाहेंगे तो।
जी मैडम, ये तो आपने बिल्कुल फैक्ट रखा, क्योंकि यूपी पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड में जो अच्छे अधिकारियों की कमी हो रही है, क्योंकि रिटायरमेंट ज्यादा हो रहे हैं। हमारी ऑफिस में भी इस तरह के हम लोग प्रॉब्लम को फेस कर रहे हैं, और इसलिए हमें बाहर से लोगों की जरूरत है कि हम इस ई-वेस्ट रूल्स को लागू किया जाए। पब्लिक की जरूरत पड़ेगी हमें, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ मैन पावर की कमी हो रही है डे बाई डे। तो इसलिए इस रूल को लागू करने के लिए हमको बाहर से एजेंसीज के माध्यम से या किसी फोरम के माध्यम से हमें इसमें पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे, तभी हम ई-वेस्ट रूल को चुनेंगे, क्योंकि ये चैलेंजिंग हो। जैसे हमारा अभी बैटरी स्क्रैप रूल लागू हुआ, अभी हमारा 1 अप्रैल से वो भी लागू हो गया। तो ये और बैटरी वेस्ट हमारी तमाम ऐसी कार्यप्रणाली हमारी हो गई है कि उसको उनका जो डिस्पोजल है, उनके वेस्ट को डिस्पोजल करने के लिए जब तक हम पब्लिक का साथ नहीं लेंगे, अन्य एजेंसी का साथ नहीं लेंगे, तो एज ए बोर्ड अकेले कार्य करने में उसको असुविधा होगी। क्योंकि हमारे पास रिटायरमेंट बहुत ज्यादा हो रहे हैं, आने वाले समय में भर्तियां कम हो रही हैं। मैंने इस पर हाई कोर्ट में भी और हमारे NGT को भी बताया है कि हमारे यहाँ इस चीज को रूल्स कैसे लागू किए जाएं, ई-वेस्ट रूल, बैटरी वेस्ट रूल, जो कि ये चैलेंजिंग है लागू करना। जो है हम लोग अपने संसाधन से लागू तो कर रहे हैं, लेकिन अभी उतने ढंग से नहीं लागू कर पा रहे हैं जितना हमें लागू करना चाहिए। और ये इसको दूर करने के लिए हमें पब्लिक के बाहर के एजेंसीज को हमें जब तक सहयोग नहीं करेंगे तब तक हम इसको लागू करने में हमें असुविधा होगी। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, sir. मैं और भी एक्चुअली क्वेश्चंस पूछना चाहूंगी बट हमारे पास समय थोड़ा कम है. So my next question goes to Mr. T. Mahesh. Sir, are you there? I'm unable to see you on this.
Yeah, madam.
Okay, perfect. Just 1 second. I'll put you on spotlight. Yes. Um, okay. So thank you so much. I think quite most of our speakers have covered a lot of points when it came to how we can solve those challenges. So the question that I want to ask you is a little bit on the role of EMPRI, since the institute is already engaged in environmental management and policy research. I would like to understand, or probably if you could tell us how an institution like EMPRI can probably collaborate with the other public institutions to drive effective e-waste collection strategies. Because right now, all in all, after all the conversations, we do understand when it comes to grassroots implementation, it is a challenge, and that's where we need the most collaboration. So over to you, sir, if you could share with us some solutions.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for giving an opportunity uh, to share some of our thoughts. As you mentioned, the Environmental Management and Policy Research Institute is an arm of the state government. Actually, it is coming under the Department of Forest Ecology and Environment. Uh, Basically, with regard, it does a lot of works related to forestry, wildlife, then climate change, and also it has its own EP recognized laboratory to carry out many studies and programs actually. So with regard to the e-waste, in fact we are helping the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board to carry out inventarization of the e-waste in the state of Karnataka. In fact, that project has been taken up, and we connected to the producers, manufacturers, the bulk consumers, and also retailers and other stakeholders who are potential generators of e-waste. And we try to understand the issues connected with various stakeholders with regard to the effective implementation of the e-waste rules. At the same time, we also connected to the recyclers, actually, recyclers and refurbishers, because they are very, very important. We try to understand what is the installed capacity, what is the operational capacity now, why there is such a large gap is there, where the waste is getting out of their hands. All such things are being studied. In fact, we submitted a report to the State Pollution Control Board also. In fact, that report is going to be assessed by them, and then if any more issues are required, that we will address actually. But there are many challenges, as informed by the previous speakers, regarding its effective implementation. The one of the important thing which we also feel is the capacity building of various stakeholders. Of course, that is being taken up within the institute whenever we conduct the training programs. Say, for example, on the Life Mission, we conduct programs on the e-waste, the regulations and the various provisions of e-waste, so as to make the stakeholders to understand its importance. At the same time, hackathon events were also conducted on e-waste saved. We involved all the college students and also the startups to develop ideas for effective management of the electronic waste being generated in the state. In fact, hackathon event, we had a very good participation. About 350 college students, especially engineering students, participated in that, and they have given their good ideas. So like this, we involve the stakeholders in the process of implementation of these e-waste tools, which is complementary for the regulatory body.
Okay, thank you. Are there some more points you would like to share, sir? Or is it done?
Yeah, it's done. Yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. Thank you so much, sir. So in
Thank
the
you.
interest of time, I think we would move on to the Q&A part. And there is one question that I see. I'd like to just talk it out, and I'll keep it open to all the speakers who are a part of this discussion. You can choose to answer this. So the question is, why is the government department still not following the proper process of disposal of e-waste? Some of them are doing the auction, which, because the auction involve can there is no, I think there's a lack of benchmarks on who can participate. We have informal sector players also who are a part of the auction, and they do the collection from the departments based on the lowest price that can be offered. So that's the question. So I would just open it to all the speakers, whoever would like to suggest a solution of how such an issue can be dealt with. And even the speakers are open to ask each other questions. So again, may I request all of you all to come on camera, please? Am I audible? Hello? Yeah.
Yes, our camera is on.
Okay, perfect. Larissa, Mr. Thomas, Rachna, Mr. Mahesh, any one of you would like to answer this question? Sir, you're on mute. Mr. Thomas, you're on mute.
I think my knowledge of this is not. It's limited. It's not very good. But then, from my interactions at meetings of pollution control boards. And even this Center of Excellence, which is functioning in Hyderabad, I visited that when it was under construction. I think a year and a half ago, and I interacted with the people, the manager who was looking after the construction, and he was of the opinion that I asked him, how are you going to get everything collected, and how is everything going to reach this place? So he also said that we will depend a lot on the informal sector. So what I feel is that we still have a long way before we can have a well-entrenched mechanism as provided in the rules to conduct a proper value chain um, uh, uh, disposal and recycling of e-waste. We still are a long way to that. Therefore, I think the dependence on the informal sector will continue for still some more time. That's the government departments are still not equipped, maybe due to funding problems. But like I said, in the northeastern states, the problem is mainly with the collection infrastructure. There is no infrastructure where you can collect and keep things. Larissa from Goa was saying that she was collecting things from people and putting it in a classroom. So this is how things are. I know a district collector in Sikkim, in the western part of Sikkim. She also took an initiative. She was very keen to do something about e-waste. She also found out a small, place in the various garages that were there attached to her collectorate, and she converted that into a place where she could store e-waste generated within her district and which people brought over to the collectorate. So people are doing this on their own at their own initiative, but there is no in most of the places, most of the states, I think people have thought of just the recycling unit or the park where a recycling unit can be set up, but they have not thought of of getting the entire chain properly established so that the collection happens and it follows that chain and goes into that recycling center. Therefore, you must depend upon the informal sector. And I think the second thing is that the informal sector also is quite big, and how you can get them into the mainstream. If you have a well-entrenched system, how can you get the informal sector to be a part of that system? This also needs to be researched. This is not being done, I think.
Yes. Anyone would like to add to this?
Can I? Yeah, Shripya, just yeah. No, I completely agree to what Mr. Thomas was mentioning, but I would still like to say, under the EPR, this is largely the responsibility of the brand owners, no, that we really talk about. Setting up collection mechanisms is still being done again, no, because of course collection is something which is not so clearly, no, being monitored, and we have not seen the role of PROs or the waste management agency so formally. But there are mechanisms which have to be established, and this is where the leakage. So I think in terms of the role of public institutions, I would still say the tendering process again is one of the crucial elements where and how it leakages. No? The where are the leakages? Again, it goes into the informal. But the point is that if you really have this digital portal which functions, na, where of course you will only have recyclers who are supposed to be legally complying and of course being audited, being verified by the state pollution control boards really. Na? I think that's where the system would change if it's really enforced and monitored in that way as it is envisaged. Things would change a bit. But other than that, I think the process of tendering, as I mentioned, maybe the subscription services and the GEM portal, if it actually allows for people to make up like a better, no? For whoever is putting the product or selling the products is responsible for its take back, whether a bulk or a public institution is looking at 3 years or a 5 years of a change period, then of course that is their responsibility, like it happens for printers also many a times. So there are certain components or items in the schedules as we have seen, and this is a practice which will actually enable, no? With the informal sector, of course, we're all agreeing that it still remains in the market. And as I think Mr. Ranjan mentioned about their upgradation, awareness building, and all of that, that's important. That's is where the manual processes of handling is required. But I think in terms of setting up traceability, the tendering process is a major area where we still require a lot of change into the which also requires a bit more brand engagement because that's fair. We haven't seen collection centers coming up into that larger space as we heard for Northeast. Similar are stories from all across. So yeah.
Thank you. So on that, I would request all our speakers to probably share their closing remarks. Larissa, we can start from you.
Okay. From the point of view of the educational institution, I think it would be our major role would be to create awareness, like I said, yes, and educate everyone about the dangers of not disposing as in e-waste correctly and giving it to say the kabadi wala or whoever was, like you talked about, the non-formal sector, and also making people aware of what is the company's responsibility. Like, for example, even now recently we bought a fridge and they refused to take back the packaging, they refused to take back any of the other things that came along with the fridge, and this, like Mr. Chandy had said some time ago, it's true, they have not been either informed by the company, or they say it's the job of, like, we're not allowed to open it till the technician comes to set it up, and the technician doesn't want to have anything to do with it, so everyone is passing the buck. So, like I said, the companies are getting their profit margins from all these things. It is their responsibility that they at least, instead of doing other kinds of, what do they call those CSR activities and all, the first thing they should do is, like, get their own act in order in terms of these type of things. Like, I I know they are doing CSR because of the visibility or the optics of the situation, like, but besides that, they should also try to do what they need to do on their part to take back whatever's coming with their products. Then also, yes, no, I don't have anything else to say except that we play a huge role in creating awareness, and that's what we have to do with students. Like, every year, the first year students would come into college. Every batch has to get like in-depth thing, because at one time, you cannot even inform them about in 2 hours everything. Like, so they need to have it coming again and again. We need to have more posters about, especially Indian posters. All that we get online is foreign posters about how to dispose e-waste, but the foreign channels don't work for us in India. So where do you take your e-waste in India? Some very, personal things that are very endemic to India, like, take your waste and go. Now, recently, MAPSA had said to dispose it at some place, but all the reports after I circulated, it said that we can't even find this MRF's, the facility. It's in such a location that either the ones who found it found nobody there, and the rest of them couldn't find it. So more publicity about where do you take your goods and go, because the biggest problem is like getting it to the place. A big device, like many old people call us up and say, we have so many things in our house, but we can't lift it, we can't take it, we can't do this. So this door-to-door collection, I know Karo Sambhav does it, and there are some one or two other organizations at 10 Plus and all who also do it. But these kinds of things, so bombarding people with messages again and again will finally get into their head that the situation is serious. Like for COVID, when they wanted everyone to wear masks, they just went on mask everywhere. Step 1, step 2, step 3, wear your mask like this, wear your mask like that. And they just got bombarded over a period of 1 year. Everybody was wearing a mask. So why can't we do something like that even with this type of thing? Like, keep on bombarding with television messages, print messages, posters, those kinds of things probably we could adopt.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Mahesh, would you like to share your closing remarks? Are you there, sir? Okay, Mr. Thomas, you may share Mr. Thomas and Ms. Rachna, both of you can share your closing remarks here.
Yeah, well, I think I've spoken long enough. Only thing is that there is a lot to be done. We make the best rules in the world. There's no doubt about it. Probably our environment protection rules are probably the best in the world. I mean, we take care of everything, but the magnitude of the problem is huge. I don't know how much. Of course, campaigning and generation of awareness and all that is there, but how much of that actually produces an impact, and at what levels? Having come to Delhi and having stayed here for the past few years, I can now understand. Sorry, past few months, I can now understand why there are dumps of solid waste here and there, even close to big hospitals. I can understand that. And I can even understand that the municipalities do a lot of campaigning. Even yesterday, and I think it's the same every day, they come out on the PA system and they say you have to segregate your waste. They even say what waste need to be segregated and hand over the waste in a segregated manner to the truck that comes to pick it up. They say all that. I mean, but what I find is that RWAs are not, they are not fulfilling their responsibilities as per the rules. So they're still not. It's not just the lower middle class or lower class, but even the elite class. I think even the educated people are not taking action to segregate their waste and ensure that it is not littered. So we still have, given the magnitude of the country, the population of the country, the spread of the country, the remoteness of our some of our villages, I think we still have a long way to go. And centers of excellence like the ones you have in Hyderabad need to be set up at many places, in many centers, and not just for e-waste, but even for solid waste. And there should be plastic recycling units. There should be MRF facilities. There should be waste management should become one very dominant aspect. And just to reply to Larissa's observation on the mask during COVID times, well, people can't see others dying in the way they died during COVID times, and therefore there is no compulsion to segregate the waste. If there is an increasing incident of cardiovascular diseases and cancer, this cannot be linked readily to improper waste segregation and disposal. It cannot. People can't see the link between, say, cancer and improper waste disposal. So because of that, you cannot think that the kind of action that we had during COVID can happen now. That's it. Thanks.
That's a fair point. But yeah, something to think about. Rachna, we started with you. We would like to end it with your closing remarks. Would you like to share few
Yeah.
thoughts? Yeah.
Thanks, Shripi. I think I already had mentioned some bit, but I also like the points that Mr. Thomas just mentioned as an overview. Yeah, no, I think I kind of still look at, since you also mentioned, at least in your logos, about lifestyles for environment, I would still say uh, we have moved a dialogue a bit, especially in terms of formulating the policy and making it more and more stringent. But in terms of awareness, especially I would say with the brands, especially on the purchasing decisions, we are still at a similar level. We still buy mobiles, we still buy electronics, whatever required at a similar space. Now, this is something where we really need to still look at of and even like in terms of smaller initiatives or which bring in a long transition, large transition. For instance, the chargers, universal chargers. Now, this is something where we really look at how our companies looking at dematerialization, and this is also something when we, even with the METI or the telecom action plan, wherein we are also working right now, Karo Sambhav is also working with us, at least in terms of developing these action plans, which are not just looking at how you manage your waste. We've also gone way ahead. Now we are looking at circularity in this sector. So I would say and I really like the points that Larissa mentioned, like as an academic institutes, even as bulk generators, how are the changes, like these public institutions can actually bring in by really mandating that we would do this and that, at green products, looking at how do you actually make it viable for the companies who are investing, who are looking at an entire life approach, taking in a responsibility that we are selling X number of devices and we are looking at its take back at the end of even making it like a policy. It's there when you buy it, but still it's not, it still goes into the tendering process, which I think which is where we still need a lot to be done. And on to the general citizens, like we all, we have to look at how we are consuming, even having questions around why not having more modular designs, things where it's easy to recycle, repair, and all of that. So I think beginning with that and then ending up with better recycling, that I think is there. So yeah, good. Thanks. I really liked the discussion, and yeah, looking forward to further.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you to all the speakers for giving
Thank you.
such.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the useful insights. And I think if I could just put it in one line, it would be we need to shift from waste management to now starting to look at the resources that can be mined from these urban mines that we have. So once again, before we close, I'd like to pay our gratitude to our principal sponsors, Apple, Dell Technologies, and Canon, for supporting us with this discussion. And to all our listeners, please stay tuned. Season 2 is going to be a little more intense with a lot of technical topics, but it would be it would be spoken in a way which is easy to consume and easy to understand. So stay tuned for the next episodes, and thank you so much for tuning in again. My name is Shri Priya, and we take a sign off. Thank you.